In September 2025, tensions escalated in the Caribbean Sea, 80 nautical miles off the coast of Venezuela, as the nation deployed a militia force of up to 4.5 million people. According to Venezuela's President Nicolas Maduro, this action aims to defend its sovereignty against foreign warships. In response, within just 36 hours, the United States dispatched 3 Aegis-guided missile destroyers and a nuclear-powered submarine, carrying approximately 4,000 sailors and Marines. The U.S. declared the deployment aimed at countering drug trafficking operations by regional criminal organizations. On deck, the muzzles of U.S. Navy Mk-45 naval guns pointed forward. The Aegis combat system stood ready. On one side stood the world's undisputed naval superpower. On the other, a smaller nation determined not to yield. What will be the cost of Venezuela's daring defiance? Like, share, and subscribe to Military Power for the latest developments. The United States has moved its attention back to the Southern Caribbean, where Washington says the flow of narcotics threatens communities across the nation. In recent weeks, the White House has framed drug cartels not only as criminal groups, but also as organizations that fall under the same category as terrorist networks. President Donald Trump made clear that the problem of fentanyl and cocaine reaching American cities is no longer just a policing issue. Earlier this year, his administration designated several gangs, including Venezuela's Tren de Aragua, as foreign terrorist organizations. Along with the designations, the Justice Department doubled the bounty for the capture of Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro, raising it to $50 million. U.S. officials argue that Maduro has long tolerated criminal activity and allowed his country to become a platform for trafficking networks that reach the Caribbean and then North America. The policy change was followed by the movement of major military assets. Defense officials confirmed that guided missile destroyers, a nuclear-powered attack submarine, and additional surveillance aircraft would operate near Venezuelan waters. At the same time, the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group and the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit were placed under U.S. Southern Command. Altogether, more than 4,000 sailors and Marines have been committed to the mission. The ships and aircraft can gather intelligence, monitor sea routes, and provide a quick response if suspicious vessels attempt to transport drugs toward the United States. They also stand as a visible message to both criminal groups and hostile governments that the United States is willing to act when its national security is at stake. Officials emphasized that such measures are necessary, given that synthetic opioids alone have taken the lives of over 100,000 Americans annually in recent years. By placing advanced naval and air assets in the Caribbean, the United States hopes to cut smuggling routes, reassure allies, and keep pressure on Maduro's government to address the growing concern of regional instability. The American Navy has now placed one of its strongest strike groups in the Southern Caribbean, marking the largest buildup in the region in decades. At the center of this force are 3 Arleigh Burke-class destroyers, each carrying more than 90 vertical launch cells that can fire a wide range of missiles, from Tomahawk cruise missiles to advanced anti-air interceptors. These ships are often described as floating fortresses because they combine radar systems, electronic warfare tools, and firepower equal to that of a small air force. Their presence near Venezuelan waters is designed to deter both drug smugglers and any state actor considering interference. Supporting the destroyers is a nuclear-powered attack submarine, whose location is rarely disclosed, but whose capability is well understood. Armed with torpedoes and cruise missiles, this platform can strike from below the surface and remain hidden for months. For U.S. commanders, such a vessel is not only a weapon of stealth, but also a shield, making it dangerous for any hostile ship to approach the American task force. The addition of this submarine sends a message that the United States is prepared to handle threats both above and beneath the sea. Alongside these warships, the Iwo Jima Amphibious Ready Group has been placed under Southern Command. It carries the 22nd Marine Expeditionary Unit numbering more than 2,200 Marines. These forces are trained for a wide spectrum of missions, ranging from humanitarian assistance to full-scale combat operations. Their equipment includes amphibious assault vehicles, helicopters, and short takeoff jets, which together create a rapid response option if a crisis occurs on land or at sea. When combined with the destroyers, the amphibious group gives Washington the ability to act quickly and flexibly, whether the challenge is a natural disaster or a political crisis disaster or a cartel convoy at sea. The overall deployment totals more than 4,500 sailors and Marines spread across 7 to 8 major vessels. Patrol aircraft such as the P-8 Poseidon also provide support, scanning the waters with radar and sensors that can track even small boats moving at high speed. This level of coordination requires advanced communications, and the ships use secure networks to link their radars and weapons, ensuring that each unit can see the same picture in real time. The Pentagon has highlighted that all operations are taking place in international waters and airspace, following the rules of navigation and international law. At the same time, U.S. officials describe the deployment as preventive rather than aggressive, stressing that the mission is focused on countering narcotics flows and reassuring regional allies. By placing such advanced capabilities near Venezuela, Washington is demonstrating that it has the resources to strike if necessary. Yet, it is also reminding friends and adversaries alike that the United States remains the primary guarantor of security in the Caribbean. Can Venezuela's military muster a response strong enough to challenge this American naval dominance? The first action of the new campaign came on September 2nd, when American forces carried out an airstrike against a fast boat leaving the Venezuelan coast. According to U.S. officials, the vessel was operated by members of the Tren de Aragua, a criminal group accused of smuggling cocaine through the Caribbean. The strike destroyed the boat and killed 11 people on board. Washington explained that this was not an attack on Venezuela as a nation, but a targeted action against organized crime networks that threaten American security. What made this operation stand out was the method chosen. In the past, the United States Coast Guard often intercepted suspicious boats and conducted searches. The Pentagon explained this step by saying the craft was moving at high speed, heavily armed, and posed a danger to patrol units in the area. By using a strike instead of boarding, commanders removed the risk to American personnel while sending a signal that dangerous smuggling missions would no longer be tolerated. The images released by the Department of Defense showed the explosion of the vessel at sea, leaving little chance of escape for those on board. Officials stressed that intelligence had confirmed the connection of the target to cartel operations, and the decision was reviewed through the chain of command before authorization. For the administration, the destruction of the craft proved the credibility of the campaign and showed that the U.S. military could act swiftly when required. The strike also reflected the wider policy of treating cartel-linked forces as terrorist actors, meaning they could be met with military power rather than only law enforcement. In Caracas, the government of President Nicolás Maduro denied any link between the destroyed boat and organized crime. State media portrayed the incident as an unlawful act and organized memorials for the victims, presenting them as innocent civilians. This narrative quickly spread in some regional outlets, raising debate about the legality of the action. Analysts noted that the Pentagon was careful to underline the legal framework in every statement, knowing that questions of sovereignty and law carry heavy weight in Latin America. Still, American leaders argued that the alternative, allowing heavily armed traffickers to continue unchecked, was worse for both the region and the United States. By opening the campaign with a decisive blow, the administration aimed to demonstrate resolve, discourage future smuggling attempts, and reinforce the message that criminal groups operating from Venezuelan territory would now face direct military consequences. How will Venezuela retaliate against this bold American strike, and what new risks will emerge? 2 days after the strike at sea, tensions rose even higher when Venezuelan fighter jets flew dangerously close to an American warship. On September 4th, radar operators aboard the USS Jason Dunham detected two F-16s approaching at low altitude as the ship sailed in international waters north of Caracas. The destroyer maintained its course and broadcast warnings on open channels, but the aircraft closed the distance until they were clearly visible to the crew. U.S. officials later described the maneuver as provocative and stressed that the ship had not crossed into Venezuelan territory. The F-16 is Venezuela's most advanced combat aircraft, capable of carrying guided missiles and bombs, and its appearance so close to an American destroyer immediately drew attention. Analysts pointed out that the Jason Dunham is equipped with the Aegis combat system, which can track hundreds of aerial targets at once and guide interceptors to defend the vessel. Yet the danger of miscalculation was real. A single missile launch or sudden move could have forced the American crew to respond within seconds. This standoff demonstrated how quickly a political dispute could escalate into a direct confrontation between two militaries. The Pentagon explained that the destroyer had acted in line with international maritime law and emphasized that freedom of navigation in open waters is a principle that cannot be challenged. According to defense officials, the ship's weapons were not activated, but the crew moved to high alert and prepared defensive systems in case of escalation. The incident lasted only a few minutes before the Venezuelan jets pulled away, but it highlighted the fragile balance in the Caribbean, where warships and fighters operate in proximity. In Washington, the administration made clear that the United States would continue its counter-narcotics mission regardless of intimidation. Military commanders underlined that American vessels would not be pushed out of international waters, and that future attempts to shadow or harass them would be met with firm responses. Caracas, on the other hand, portrayed the flight as a demonstration of sovereignty, arguing that foreign warships so near to Venezuelan shores demanded a show of strength. Local media celebrated the F-16 pilots as defenders of national pride, while opposition groups worried that such moves risked drawing the country into a conflict it could not sustain. International observers noted that Venezuela's Air Force has struggled in recent years with limited spare parts and declining readiness, choosing to send fighters against a modern U.S. destroyer, particularly risky. For many analysts, this was the moment when the confrontation shifted from a campaign against cartels to a direct test of wills between governments. The close pass of two fighters did not change the balance of power, but it raised the political temperature and reminded both sides how easily accidents could spiral into open confrontation. By holding its position without overreacting, the United States demonstrated discipline and restraint, showing that its mission was guided not by provocation, but by a commitment to law and security. What will the United States do to counter this provocative Venezuelan challenge and protect its forces? The next chapter unveils a significant escalation. After the tense encounter between Venezuelan jets and an American destroyer, Washington decided to raise its posture by moving some of its most advanced aircraft into the region. On September 5th, 10 F-35A Lightning II fighters were flown to bases in Puerto Rico, placing fifth-generation stealth technology within quick reach of the Caribbean. The deployment served two purposes: to protect U.S. naval units operating off Venezuela and to discourage further risky maneuvers by the Venezuelan Air Force. The F-35 is not just another fighter. It combines radar-evading design, advanced sensors, and data-sharing systems that allow pilots to see far beyond the range of older jets. With a combat radius of more than 600 nautical miles and the ability to carry precision-guided weapons, these aircraft give commanders both defensive and offensive options. By stationing them in Puerto Rico, the Pentagon ensured that any hostile aircraft approaching U.S. vessels could be tracked and, if necessary, intercepted in minutes. Military officials stressed that the move was precautionary rather than aggressive. The goal was to prevent escalation by making sure potential adversaries understood the risks of confrontation. This shift also reassured regional partners, that the United States was committed to keeping sea lanes open and ensuring that counter-narcotics patrols could continue without intimidation. By linking the threat of force to clear conditions, hostile acts against U.S. units, the White House placed responsibility for any escalation on those who might provoke it. Now, the United States had placed its most modern combat aircraft against a regional air force still relying on aging fighters. This imbalance highlighted the risks Venezuela would face in any direct clash. Observers also noted that by using Puerto Rico as a base, Washington avoided placing assets directly on the South American mainland, which reduced the chance of being accused of preparing an invasion. In Caracas, state media criticized the deployment as evidence of foreign pressure, while opposition figures warned that the government's actions were drawing the country into a dangerous game it could not win. International reaction was mixed. Some neighbors welcomed the show of deterrence, while others feared that the region was sliding closer to confrontation. For the United States, the decision to send F-35s was framed as a responsible step. It protected the mission, lowered the chance of accidents, and reminded both criminals and governments that American forces would defend themselves if challenged. Rather than pushing toward war, the deployment aimed to create stability by making reckless actions too costly to attempt. How will Venezuela adapt to this superior American air presence, and what unconventional strategies might they employ? In response to the arrival of American forces and the deployment of advanced aircraft, President Nicolas Maduro announced a nationwide mobilization of civilian militias. He declared that more than 4.5 million volunteers were ready to defend Venezuela's territory, portraying the United States as a direct threat to sovereignty. These units, often organized by neighborhoods and supported by the government, are meant to provide manpower in the event of a conflict, although their training and equipment are limited compared with regular armed forces. The announcement was broadcast across state media and framed as a patriotic call. Marches were organized in several cities, with supporters pledging loyalty and readiness to resist any foreign intervention. For Maduro, the move served two purposes. It demonstrated resolve to domestic audiences while also signaling to Washington that Caracas would not back down easily. However, military experts noted that mass militias without modern weapons or reliable logistics cannot balance the technological gap between Venezuela's forces and the U.S. Navy backed by stealth aircraft. At the same time, Maduro attempted to strike a cautious note by calling for dialogue with regional organizations, stating that Venezuela wanted peace, but was prepared for what he described as armed struggle if attacked. This dual message, resistance at home and negotiation abroad, showed the pressure his government faced. On one side was the need to project strength to maintain political control. On the other was the reality that an open clash with the United States would bring severe consequences. For outside observers, the mobilization illustrated how the crisis had shifted. What began as a counter-narcotics campaign was now seen inside Venezuela as a challenge to national survival. By raising civilian forces, Maduro sought to frame the confrontation not just as a political dispute, but as a fight for independence, a move that could deepen tensions across the region. Will this massive civilian mobilization deter the U.S. or push the conflict into uncharted territory? The escalation around Venezuela quickly drew reactions from across Latin America and beyond, demonstrating that the crisis had become more than a bilateral dispute. Trinidad and Tobago publicly supported Washington's counter-narcotics mission, arguing that cartel violence had destabilized the wider Caribbean. By contrast, Brazil, Chile, and Mexico expressed worry that the buildup of warships and fighter jets risked igniting a conflict in their neighborhood. The regional body CELAC issued a collective statement calling for dialogue and urging all parties to preserve the Caribbean as a zone of peace. At the same time, Russia and Iran criticized the operation, accusing the United States of overreach, while European partners kept a cautious silence. For U.S. officials, these reactions confirmed the sensitivity of the situation. The Pentagon emphasized that the mission followed international law and that American vessels were operating in open waters. Yet analysts noted that the United States was pursuing more than one goal. On the surface, the campaign is framed as a fight against narcotics, with fentanyl and cocaine causing over 100,000 deaths annually in America. By September 2025, the confrontation between the United States and Venezuela had left profound impacts. The presence of 3 Aegis destroyers, a nuclear submarine, and stealth F-35s faced off against 4.5 million Venezuelan militiamen, alongside a speedboat attack that claimed 11 lives. Trump insisted this was a war against cartels like Tren de Aragua, while Maduro called it an invasion plot, leveraging the crisis to unite the people. Rising tensions risk disrupting Caribbean stability, trade routes, and regional cooperation. Both sides pursue their goals: U.S. anti-drug efforts and Venezuela's defense of sovereignty. Believe that, from the first steps of diplomacy, the future of the Caribbean can shine brightly with stability and unity. If you value clear, fact-based updates, subscribe to Military Power and turn on notifications, then tell us in the comments.